Welcome, one and all, to another episode of Maximum Freedom with Mike. I'm your host, Mike, coming at you from the dungeon, what I so affectionately call my basement studio office, also kind of like my hideout when my kids are crazy, and every guy's got to have one of those. It's too big to be a man cave, and it has a lot of stuff from my kids in it, so I can't really claim it as 100% my own, but it's the closest thing to personal space I'm going to get in this apartment. So, hey, whatever, I'll take it. How's everybody doing? It's Monday. Weekend flew by, as usual. I don't know what you guys did over the weekend, but on Saturday, I actually went to a straw poll for two candidates who are going to primary Speaker of the House, John Boehner. Yeah, I'm not real pleased with John Boehner. I am very excited to see people, trying to primary him. The candidate that I'm actually supporting in the run against him is pretty darn close to being libertarian on most things. There are probably some differences on social issues that we would have, but considering that no one else is really running other than his opponent, who was pretty much a typical Warhawk conservative, I'll take it. I'll definitely back him. He's a good guy. I know him personally. And I'm hoping that here soon I'll be able to get him on the show. I think that would be fantastic to do an interview with him and kind of expose some of you guys to what's going on here in Ohio 8. District 8 here in Ohio has become like the central focus for these primaries and the election that takes place in November. Because if we can remove John Boehner, that's going to send a message to the whole country saying, hey, these guys who are claiming to be for liberty and freedom, who are basically just progressives, regardless of whether the R or the D is next to their name, you guys, we can kick them out. That should be common sense given our political system, but you'd be surprised. So I went to the straw poll and showed my support for the candidate I wanted. I'm not going to mention him by name yet because I want to see if I can get him on here for an interview. But he won the straw poll, so hopefully he'll get the funding that was being offered for his campaign. I plan on being involved with his campaign in a little bit different capacities here as soon as we get together and work out some things. So I'm excited about those opportunities to be involved and to really try to do something to fix this broken system of ours. Try to get everything back to where it should be. You know what I'm saying? All right, guys. So check it out. This is going to be a completely overhauled Maximum Freedom with Mike. I have changed the publishing website that I use. I now use internetarchive.org for now to handle all of the hosting and publishing of the podcast because Spreaker is just not sufficient for my needs. There's a limit on storage. There's also a limit on how much you can record at a time unless you pay for a premium subscription, which I'm trying to create a business and build a business while at the same time working full-time. I don't have money that I can pour into paying those things right now. And it's extremely expensive. So I wanted to find another way that I could, create one long show, about an hour and 15 minutes, something like that, rather than posting up 2 half-hour segments, which seemed stupid. So, now you only have one file to download instead of 2 to get the full show. Hey, that's awesome, right? There are some big changes coming in how the podcast is structured as well. I want to provide my listeners with the maximum amount of value in this content that's possible. So I'm going to try to make the podcast about an hour, no longer than an hour and a half. I'll probably rarely ever go over an hour. And it's going to basically be 2 different parts. Okay? The first part of the podcast from now on is going to be known as the Principles of Freedom. What I want to do here is I want to help educate millennials. That's specifically who I want to reach out to, is the dudes and dudettes. Okay, maybe the word dudettes is a little outdated. Kind of like your hipster generation. Because I feel like that generation, along with, our children, are going to be the ones who can actually fix this huge mess that was, kind of made here. So I think it's important to provide resources that teach the basic principles of liberty and freedom to that group. Now, anybody can listen to this show and anybody can, get value from this content. So it's not like I'm, excluding anybody else. All are welcome to listen and all can definitely glean something from this content. So I want as many people to listen as possible. But that's kind of where I'm going to be focusing a lot of the content and a lot of the approach that I take with things here in the future. So, I'm going to go through a principle of freedom each day that kind of reflects the values of a very, very limited government / libertarian view of both economics and social issues. Now, included in that is going to be history, because in order to understand how to fix this mess, we have to understand how we got in this mess. And the only way to do that is to look back through history and see where things went wrong, what was done, and basically how we can fix it through avoiding those same mistakes in the future. So I'm big into American history. I love history. I've been a student of it for many, many years. It was one of my favorite subjects in school, and it's one of my favorite subjects still today. So I want to share that with other people and help hopefully educate people enough to wake up, see what is really going on in our country today so that we can fix things. So that's going to be one half of the show. And the other half of the show is going to be news commentary. And that's just going to be going over some of the big stories that are going on in the country and in the world and talking about it from a liberty-minded constitutionalist perspective and, just try to have some fun with it too, So those are going to be the two parts of the show, how I'm going to start presenting the content. So, that is now how it's going to be structured. So I hope you guys get as much value as possible out of both parts of the show, and I hope that it's educational and entertainment, edutainment, whatever you want to call it, and that, you basically grow from it. Now, along with doing this podcast, I'm doing blogging, and I'm working on YouTube content, as well as homeschooling material. I am a homeschooling advocate and parent. My wife homeschools our children primarily, although I'm about to start taking a larger role in that. So my ultimate vision is a content / media company, okay, that provides resources to teach people of, all walks of life, all about the principles of freedom in an effort to preserve our country and our Constitution. Because I believe it's through education that this is possible. So I am creating an entire company that is going to have all these different types of content available, and with the goal in mind of educating the masses, okay? And I'm about to start raising funds through two different mediums to help get the financial backing to really do these projects and to help me create the as yet to be named company that will unite all these different content types together. My hope is to grow and expand to include shows and content from other creators so that I can build a network that seeks to connect with people who are in the millennial generation, as I stated earlier, and even people who are younger, such as my children, so that everybody can benefit from the content, grow, and we can spread the message of liberty. Okay, that is the ultimate goal here. So there's going to be more information coming along here soon about that kind of stuff so that you guys can learn how you can participate in helping me to raise these funds. I am going to possibly be using Kickstarter, but the other one I'm going to use is, I think it's Patreon, where basically the audience can choose to donate $1 or like $5 or whatever a month, so that the project can be ongoing and we'll have funding ongoing. And that is definitely the direction I want to go, because I want to do this for a living, and eventually, hopefully, the company will be self-sustaining to where I won't necessarily have to take that kind of funding. But I'm still going to give the podcast away for free, but people who choose to donate can help me, turn this into something that is not only a realization of my dreams, but that will be beneficial to, everybody else who listens and who decides to purchase the books and everything else that we're going to be working on. So I just want to let you guys know kind of like the direction that I'm headed, the vision and the plan that I have in my head to spend my life on this work of preserving liberty and getting people back to the foundations of the Constitution so that we can have a republic for our children to grow up in. Okay, that's something that I'm extremely passionate about. I want my kids to have a country where they are free to worship God without fear of the state interfering with that. I want my kids to grow up in a country where they can own firearms to protect themselves, both from the nutbags out in the world and from the nutbags in the government. I want my kids to be able to freely express themselves without worry of government taking them to jail or labeling something a hate crime because they disagree with somebody's lifestyle. I mean, these are just some of the things that are important to me, and that's why I want to dedicate my life to this work. So I hope you'll join me in that as details get ironed out, and as I get things prepared, I'll share information about the links to these different sites and different fundraising things that I'm doing, and I'd appreciate any support and help that y'all could give me. All right, guys. As I stated earlier, I am a homeschool advocate. I'm a staunch believer in homeschooling. I believe that is probably the best way to educate your child. We've been doing homeschooling now for probably 2 to 3 years. My daughter is 5, and she already has a reading comprehension level of probably what I would assume to be a 5th or 6th grade level. She's reading the book Little Women, and this is just one of many chapter books that she's read at age 5. Okay? She's probably read more books now than I have in the past year, and they're all 150, 200 pages or longer. So, I mean, she keeps a journal of what she reads so that she can, explain to us what's happening in the story and things. So her comprehension is there. She's grasping these concepts and asking us questions, and she's just smart, man. It's incredible. Her vocabulary is incredible. How she articulates concepts and things is mind-blowing. And I don't attribute that to us, per se. I attribute it to creating an educational program that caters to her needs and allows her to learn at her own pace. Therefore, she's gone on beyond where other kindergartners and 5-year-olds would be at her age. So what I want to focus on today is what exactly the problem with public education is. I mean, the public education system that we have in place today is a complete train wreck. All right? It's completely controlled by progressives, and progressives believe that they can raise your kids better than you can. Okay? They believe that the state has all the answers because they have experts. Progressives think that the solution to all our problems lies in government and legislation. We all who are liberty-minded know that that is not the case at all. Okay? Now, this belief that progressives have has led to a one-size-fits-all type of education program and curriculum that, to be quite honest, is proving to be very detrimental to the quality of education that kids today receive. I mean, not every kid learns the same, okay? So the kids who are a little bit slower at learning and mastering material get more attention and slow down the whole pace of the class, so that those who are, a bit faster at grasping and mastering the material are forced to be held back and held down due to the slower students. Okay, and that's not fair. And that causes the kids who grasp the material to get bored, and when you're bored, honestly, you don't perform as well academically. So part of the reason that you see even smart, intelligent kids coming home with crappy grades is A, they're lazy, and B, they're bored. And the boredom kind of leads to the laziness. So this one-size-fits-all thing doesn't work. Okay, not everybody learns at the same pace, and not everybody learns in the same way. Every child is different and unique in the way that they learn. Every one of us is different in the way that we learn. It's just how it is. Now, the quality of the education is pretty apparent by the statistics here, okay? The U.S. Department of Education says that in the year 2013, just last year, the literacy rate is 14%. That means 14% of adults do not know how to read. That's 32 million adults who have little ability to read. And if they can't read, they can't write. So their communication is greatly hindered. Their ability to get a job, greatly hindered. Now, 21% of adults who can read below a 5th grade level. They read below the level of like a 10-year-old. So it's like, since my daughter is more advanced than the norm, That would mean that there are adults out there who read just slightly better than my 5-year-old daughter. Scary stuff, man. That's just, and it's horrible. 19% of high school students can't read. Now, we send our kids to public schools, and this is the product that pops out. We're 29th in math overall in the world, and 22nd in science. We used to be a whole lot higher than that. We used to lead the way back when we had a free market system, at least more free than what we have today. And the problem with all this is that it's just getting worse and worse. The quality of education is horrible. For those who don't believe me, I would suggest you check out a film. I don't know if it's still on Netflix or not, called Waiting for Superman. That documentary is what finally got my wife on board to homeschool. I'd been advocating to her to do homeschooling for quite a while, and that I felt like that was the path we needed to take with our children, but she just wasn't sold on it, because she went to a Christian school and a private school, I had a totally different experience than my wife had in a public school. Man, I can't tell you one thing I really learned. I was extremely bored. I too had a high reading level and comprehension level. When I was a kid, I think it was like in 3rd grade, they tested me and I had like a 10th or 12th grade reading level and comprehension level. So, for me, going through school, being required to, stay within these certain parameters that, basically one size fits all, slowed me down. It made me really bored. So as I got into junior high and high school, I stopped caring about my academics. Nothing really challenged me and engaged me and caused me to care. And, of course, there were girls, too, but that's a whole different story. But anyway, my experience was much different, so I wanted her to get on board with the homeschooling. When she watched Waiting for Superman, and they expose a lot of the very poor quality of public education through statistics, through firsthand accounts, through, video footage, it was overwhelming. And she finally said, hey, you know what, we can't do this to our kids. I don't want to send them even to a private school. I want them to have the best education, and I feel like we could do better. And I think we're succeeding quite well, and it's not because we're super special. It's just because we're moving at my daughter's pace. Now, along with the poor quality of the education, public schools also push a progressive agenda. And this agenda is geared toward making the students dependent on the state. History is revised to make evil men look like heroes in order to advance that agenda, and it's also made to make our founding fathers look like villains. Now, that's not to say that our founding fathers were perfect by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, our founding fathers did a lot of things that, quite frankly, were not very good or positive. Slavery comes to mind, but a lot of what our founding fathers wanted to do was create a system that was open enough that one day slavery could be taken out. They knew at that time period there was no way to get that ratified and passed to get rid of slavery. But they all agreed that it was evil. And George Washington is notorious for treating his slaves more like employees. He got down in the fields and worked with them. He paid them. He took care of them. He gave them food. He made sure they had good quality clothing. They loved him dearly. He did not treat them like other people treated their slaves at that time period, and that was, one of the things that set him apart. But a lot of the founding fathers felt that way. So, again, they're not perfect. They made a lot of mistakes, but they were hardly the villains that, public school textbooks paint them out to be now. And we should never be painting guys like Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson as heroes. They were some of the most evil sons of you-know-whats ever to exist in this country. I mean, they were total racists to the core. A lot of their policies were racist. Woodrow Wilson really hated black people, and he supported wholeheartedly the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, the list just goes on and on. If you read your genuine history, if you look at actual fact and not just these biased textbooks, you'll see all this stuff. And there's, it's documented. It's clear as day. These guys are not heroes at all. They were evil, advocating for the sterilization of black people so that they couldn't continue to breed, as they put it, and have children. I mean, that's just some of the evil wickedness these guys did. I mean, it goes on and on. I'll talk about them in a future podcast, probably way down the line when we start getting into some history stuff. They're trying desperately to push this progressive agenda. And you can see that by how they're limiting religious expression in schools. Now, I'm not talking about making everybody pray or anything, but allowing students the freedom to, pray before a meal or to gather together in a group and pray for each other, that really shouldn't have any bearing on the school. These kids should be allowed to express themselves so long as they aren't forcing other people to hold their views or wanting other people to hold their views specifically, and trying to push that or whatever. If they're just meeting to pray or to have devotions or whatever, that should not be a problem. Okay, that's guaranteed in the Constitution. There's a lot of censoring of First Amendment rights of students. You're not allowed to wear t-shirts that they deem to be offensive or that have bad words on them, or they're not allowed to say bad words or cuss words, things like that, without, getting that censored. Or one case that comes to mind is where pro-life students placed up some posters expressing their views about, the pro-life issue, and the school had them taken down. That, to me, is a violation of their First Amendment rights to be able to have free speech. Sex ed in kindergarten, we've all heard those stories in the news, teaching kids that, about homosexuality in kindergarten and things that these kids don't need to know yet. That's just too young. And sex ed should never be taught by the public school, in my opinion, anyway. Parents need to be doing that job. All right, that's the responsibility of a parent. And if parents don't do that, that's on them. Not telling parents about abortions. There are some schools that have helped teenage girls get abortions and not told the parents about it. Aside from the fact that I'm extremely pro-life and think that's just evil, not telling the parent so that the child and parent can make an informed decision together, that speaks volumes. That is obviously the state trying to supplant the parent's responsibility in that situation. And that's trying to tell that child, look, your parent is going to judge you. Your parent is going to be upset. Look, we care about you. So we care about you so much, we'll help you get this abortion, and we won't tell anybody. See, you can trust the government to take care of you. We'll always be there for you. That's the message that sends, and that's why that is so sickening. And that's just, a few examples of how they're trying to push the progressive agenda in public schools. Woodrow Wilson and Theodore Roosevelt, two guys I will be talking a lot about negatively in this topic, believed that the whole purpose of education was to make kids as, quote, less like their fathers as possible. I believe that was Woodrow Wilson who said that specifically. They wanted to undermine a parent's right and responsibility to educate their child and pass on their value system to their child. And instead, they wanted to exchange that child's value system that he learned at home for one chosen by the state. If that right there doesn't just freak you out a little bit, think about all of the stories that have been in the news recently about where a child disagrees with a principle being taught by a teacher, and the teacher says, no, that's not the right way to look at things, or no, we can't talk about Jesus in school, or anything like that. It's not just a matter of separation of church and state. It's them trying to weasel their way into a kid's mind, make him doubt everything that his parents have taught him, to try to make the parents look like foolish morons. So this kid will reject the value system being passed on to him from his parents, and will then turn and trust the state to give him a value system to hold on to. And of course, the value system pushed by the state has the government being the hero of the story, the savior, so that they can get these young children to be compliant to them in the future. Sick. It's thought control. Public education also provides a very poor environment for learning. Look at all the news stories for bullying that we hear about so much now. Bullying has always been a problem, but the type of bullying going on nowadays is even worse than what it was. Kids are getting beat up a lot more. There's school shootings, drugs everywhere. None of these things lend themselves to an environment that encourages learning, critical thinking, personal growth, any of that, okay? It's a pretty dark, scary thing. I wouldn't want my kid going there at all. That's part of the reason we homeschool too, is I don't think the environment is conducive to learning. There's a lot of distraction, there's a lot of wickedness, there's a lot of danger that I don't want my child to be exposed to. Now, the reason why I'm talking about all this and that I'm so passionate about this is, previous generations made this mess we're in, going all the way back to Wilson and Roosevelt. And our generation, my generation, is making its own contributions to this mess that was made. So the only hope we really have of preserving our republic and restoring the government to its constitutional limits is our children. These kids, they gotta be top-notched, highly educated, moral people who stand on principle, man. That's what we need. And in order to make that happen, something has to be done to strip away the influence of the state in education and restore that responsibility to the parents. The parent is the one who is responsible for a child's education and learning, not the state. Parents, you are responsible for providing food, shelter, clothing, love, support, and education. You cannot pass off your responsibilities to the state. That is immoral. It is wrong. It is not the state's job to be responsible on your behalf. It is your job to take care of your kids and make sure they have the education that they need. And it's time that we all stepped up and started taking that responsibility. So right now you might be asking, well, if this is what's wrong with the public education system, how do we go about fixing it? On Wednesday, we're going to discuss the answers, the solution to the public education problem. And I'm telling you, if we follow these solutions, if we actually put these principles into practice, we can solve this issue. We can save our children from going through this huge mess. And we can equip them with everything they need to restore this republic. Welcome back, everybody, to part 2. We're going to be talking about some top news stories today. Looking at some stuff going on, talking about it, making fun of people. You know, it's going to be a blast, I'm sure. All right, guys. One of the first stories I saw this morning when I was preparing the podcast was a story about establishment Republicans. Now, I shared at the beginning of the podcast how I live in Speaker of the House John Boehner, his district, and quite frankly, all the people here are tired of him. So we're all kind of campaigning pretty hard to have him primaried. And the reason is because he is an establishment Republican. To the core, this guy is establishment Republican. He has run on the platform of being conservative and being liberty-minded for many, many years. And he's been in office for like 23 years, so he's had plenty of time to get this right. Everything he says he runs on, he does the exact opposite of. And he's quoted as saying that he fully trusts President Obama. That in of itself is reason to get rid of him. But his voting record also speaks volumes about his character, which is, I say one thing and I do another. He's a career politician. The only thing he cares about is power, money, wealth, himself. I mean, that's just the kind of guy he is. So when I saw this article, it's kind of like, this is exactly where my head has been lately. The story has to do with Mitt Romney joining Chris Christie at an RGA fundraiser in Boston. Oh boy, anybody who wants to join hands with Chris Christie is making it clear that they are not at all a liberty-minded individual, that they are definitely either a neocon or just a straight progressive. I mean, that's just all there is to it. I mean, we all know that Mitt Romney is a stinking progressive. I mean, look at his, government-run healthcare crap that he wants to do in Massachusetts or whatever, that he did do. And, it doesn't take much to see that he's just Obama light, pretty much. It says establishment Republicans are still seeing the upside to New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, despite the many scandals that came to Trenton in 2014. Almost 2 months removed from the initial Bridgegate revelations, Christie is appearing at a Republican Governors Association fundraiser with Mitt Romney. Again, Mitt Romney is pretty much the definition of a establishment Republican. According to the Washington Post, Romney is confirmed to be in town for the event both as a guest for the fundraising event, which is scheduled for Thursday, and as a speaker. He's expected to deliver remarks to the attendees and later huddle with donors and politicians attending the event. The Massachusetts trip is the first in the second series of tours for Christie as head of the Republican Governors Association this year, the first taking him to Florida, Illinois, and Texas. This time around, he is expected to travel to Utah, Georgia, Connecticut, and Michigan, according to Politico. Okay, you see, there's a huge problem here with all of these Republicans who are coming out in support of Governor Chris Christie. One of the big issues is that this establishment Republican Party thing is the exact opposite of what we need to save this country. Okay, these guys are nothing but progressives. They think the solution to all of our problems are more government intervention. That is basically a progressive. You got to stop looking at the R and the D. Republican, Democrat, those things don't matter anymore. What you have is liberty and progressivism. That's what you have. Freedom, progressivism. There's nothing else. You're either a progressive or you're on the side of liberty. That's all there is to it. The big issue that I have, though, with this is that Chris Christie is a very immoral dude. I mean, it is looking very likely that he was the one responsible for the whole bridge closing thing. You know, he sought to use his political power and abuse it for revenge purposes. I mean, that's just crappy, yo. You know, that is a man of low caliber character right there. And that's the problem with our Congress right now, is it's full of dudes like that. Full of dudes who just don't get it. Right? They just don't get it. And, you know, to be moral doesn't mean that you necessarily have to be religious. But, I mean, there are certain things that everybody knows is wrong. Killing another person? That's wrong. Stealing from another person? That's wrong. Using your power to control the actions of others is wrong. There's a certain set of morality that is just inherent in human nature, that we know right from wrong. At least those of us who are normal. So, we need to stop electing people who have no moral center, who aren't principled, who don't stand on what they truly believe, or who just don't believe in anything, including right and wrong. We need to stop electing guys like Chris Christie, guys like John Boehner, who are not principled, who are immoral, who make bad decisions. And we need to start really examining candidates who are running for these offices to see what kind of character they actually possess. Let's look beyond just the voting record, even though that's important. You know, what does their private life look like? Now, we don't need to know details, you know, but have they been known to lie? Have they done things that are wrong, that are illegal, that are unethical? If so, we don't need that guy in a political office. We need to have guys who have some type of moral center to them, who have an understanding of right and wrong, and who will stand on those principles regardless of the pressure they receive from others, who won't cave in, you know, to power, to politics, to money. We don't have many of those kind of people out there, and that's why the country is partly in the mess that it's in. You know, guys like Chris Christie are the problem. Guys like Mitt Romney are the problem. They're not the answer. That's why I wanted to share that story with you. You can read more about the actual details of the fundraiser and things, which I really wasn't interested in. Just the fact that there's so many people supporting Chris Christie is why I wanted to look into that story. You can go to Breitbart.com, click on Big Government, and you'll see the story there. Highly disappointed by the fact that people are still supporting Chris Christie. Another story that I found from Breitbart here says, Obama looks to governors for help with economy. This story is rich right here, okay? This is an AP story. It says, his domestic priorities stalled in a divided Congress. President Barack Obama is looking for allies among America's governors. The president was to meet Monday with governors of both parties at the White House, following a Sunday dinner in which he told state leaders their corporation is vital to make sure we're doing right by the American people. Really? Okay. If you really want to do what's right by the American people, how about you stop trampling all over the Constitution? How about you stop the NSA spying program? Stop flying drones into innocent civilians in foreign countries. Bring our troops home. Just a thought. If you really cared about American citizens, you would take some steps to preserve the Constitution and our personal liberties. I don't see you doing that anytime soon. I look forward to working with each of you, not just in our meetings tomorrow, but throughout this year, what I hope to be a year of action, Obama said at a black tie dinner with dozens of leaders who were in town for a meeting of the National Governors Association, the same event Chris Christie is associated with. When we've got a Congress that sometimes seems to have a difficult time acting, I want to make sure that I have the opportunity to partner with each of you in any way I can, the president said. It's unclear whether some Republican governors are willing to collaborate with the Democratic president ahead of the November midterm elections. Republicans were planning to share their ideas for improving the nation's economy. They include eliminating federal regulations and further delaying key provisions of Obama's health care overhaul. In a Sunday interview, Louisiana Governor Bobby Jindal said he would encourage the president to use his executive authority to jumpstart the economy. This is the part I want to talk about. Jindal said while it was blatantly unconstitutional for the president to ignore federal laws, Obama's position allows him to work around Congress in constructive ways. Instead of new regulations, new spending that haven't worked, I would argue he should use his newfound executive powers to actually promote jobs, Jindal said, adding that Congress should be doing more as well. It'd be hard to argue they could be doing less. Hold on just a minute here. Did you just say Obama's position allows him to work around Congress in constructive ways? That it's blatantly unconstitutional for the president to ignore federal laws, but he can work around the Congress in constructive ways? I don't think so. What is the matter with you people? Holy crap! The president should not have the level of executive power that he has. He should not be allowed to sidestep Congress. The whole reason we have a Congress is separation of powers. It's so that we don't end up having a dictator. It's not the government's job to jumpstart the economy. The free market can take care of that on its own if we would get the crap out of the way. Deregulation. Let the market handle crap. You want to know how to jumpstart the economy? It's simple. This is so simple. These guys are just complete and total tools, man. I can't understand why this concept is so difficult to grasp. It's easy. Check it out. You stop spending and you live within your means. Holy cow, that is freaking my mind blown. Mind blown. I've never heard this before. I mean, it just, wow. I feel like I just got illuminated with some serious truth here. Come on, guys, really? Every financial advisor, planner, whatever in the world who's trying to help you get out of debt would tell you the same freaking thing. If it works on a personal level, it works at the government level. Because economic principles are like that. The free market is like that. You want to know what you can do? I'll tell you what you can do. Okay? Let's stop meddling in the world's affairs. No more nation building. Let's bring our troops home, close down unnecessary bases, end the war on terror. Okay? That would save trillions right there. Let's end the failed war on drugs, which is something like $4 trillion wasted. That would certainly help a lot. Let the free market handle the drug thing. Seriously, I know it sounds crazy, but it would work. You'll destroy the black market, keep streets safer, prevent people from getting weird concoctions of drugs. I mean, it just makes sense. Work toward entitlement reform that will enable us to cut all the dead weight from the freeloaders on the government system, and then allow us to make sensible cuts to those programs so that we can eventually phase them out completely. Let's secure the border and stop giving illegals entitlements. That would help a lot too. Giving the president more power is a horrible idea. It's not a solution. It's part of the problem. There was a reason why the founders wanted the separation of powers between the three branches of government. It's to prevent any one branch from getting too powerful. It's to prevent us from going through a dictatorship. The president's power doesn't need to be increased. He doesn't need to find ways to constructively break the law. I mean, what the heck? This dude is out of control as it is, and you think that giving him more power and saying, well, as long as you're creating jobs and stimulating the economy, that's a constructive way to work around Congress. That is crazy. That is crazy. The answer, my friend, is no. No, no, no. What kind of... I just don't even know what to say. Why would people think that it's a good idea to give one man so much power? The reason we have a constitution is to ensure that we have freedom, to ensure that we do not fall into the trap that we've seen so many communist and strong central government countries go through. And we're going to go ahead and just totally ignore hundreds of years of wisdom, thousands of years of wisdom on how to run a republic in favor of giving this one guy the ability to constructively break the law. Doesn't even make sense to me. Doesn't make sense to me at all. I better move along before I get on a tangent. High Courts rejects NRA appeals. Another story from the Associated Press. The Supreme Court has turned away appeals from the National Rifle Association, which complained about resistance by governments and judges to the High Court's recent seminal rulings declaring that Americans have a constitutional right to own a gun. The justices on Monday let stand rulings that upheld a federal law that prevents young adults ages 18 to 20 from purchasing a handgun or ammunition from a licensed federal firearms dealer, and a Texas regulation that prohibits most 18 to 20-year-olds from carrying a handgun outside the home. The NRA said the laws make it difficult, if not impossible, for young adults to exercise their Second Amendment rights. I totally agree with the NRA on this. The Constitution gives us the Second Amendment right to own firearms for our protection. Now, there are two ways that we protect ourselves with firearms. The first is to protect our property and our families from all the crazy butt wipes who live in this world, who would like to come in, rape our daughters, take our stuff that we've worked hard for, and get away with it. All right? We have the right to protect ourselves against that kind of crap. We also have the right to protect ourselves against out-of-control government, who might try to force us to give up our rights, who might try to take us at will when they have no right to, legally. That's why we own those firearms. In fact, the first measure that a totalitarian government usually takes is to silence free speech and then to remove firearms from a person's home. They don't want an armed society because an armed society can resist. You take away free speech, you take away the guns, nobody can resist you. That's the reason why it was put in the Constitution, is to prevent those things from happening. If you're 18 to 20 years old, you're old enough to buy a gun. Come on, man. I mean, that's ridiculous. How old do they want you to be? 21? What is this? What is it about 21 that makes everybody think you're magically an adult? I know guys who are in their 30s who act more like 4-year-olds than some 4-year-olds do. So what is it about that age, 21, that's, you're mature enough to handle your alcohol now. Oh, you're mature enough to handle a firearm. Really? So you're old enough to sign up for the army and go die in some war that probably isn't being fought for a just cause. But you're not old enough to drink and you're not old enough to buy a firearm. But you're old enough to sign up for the army and go learn how to use their firearm. Am I the only one who thinks that's stupid? Come on, yo. Let's just get back to the Constitution. It's simple. That's what I love about it. It's simple. I read some good news, and this news made me smile like a Cheshire cat. I mean, grinning from ear to ear. Piers Morgan was fired. I am not a fan whatsoever of Piers Morgan. I am so glad he got fired. I've never been more happy about someone being fired in my whole entire life. I'm ready to go do the happy dance. I'm ready to go do cartwheels naked down the sidewalk. That's how happy I am about this. I'll spare everybody that gruesome, gory, disgusting nightmare, but that's what I feel like doing on the inside. I am glad to see this guy gone because he was so anti-American. And he was anti-freedom in general. And, it started with the whole gun thing, but I mean, this guy just every week just droned on and on about how he has the right answers to fix America.
Why would you do this? Just get rid of guns. Get rid of guns like Britain did. This should not be going on.
You see how annoying that sounds? That's what Piers Morgan's voice sounded to my ears. Okay, every time he talked, it's like nails on a chalkboard. But what I'm curious about is, how is a guy who's not from here and never truly participated in this country I don't believe he's a citizen. How's that guy going to tell us how to run our business here? Especially when the system and the laws that he's talking about haven't worked in his country. Look, guns do not kill people. Guns are inanimate objects. They can't kill anybody. They can't do anything. They're guns. They're tools. You are crazy to outlaw guns and thinking that will stop violence. What are you going to do? Then I could just take a knife and kill you. Are you going to ban knives? What happens after you ban knives and those don't work? You know, what happens then? Are you going to ban sticks? You're going to ban rocks? Eventually, there's nothing you can do because, people are going to kill each other. That's just all there is to it. People are not perfect. We live in what I believe is a sinful, fallen world, according to my Christian worldview. You're never going to get rid of evil completely. Taking away a gun isn't going to solve that problem. Which is why I don't understand what Piers Morgan's point was, because he took away guns, knife murders went up. You cannot legislate people into moral perfection. We already have laws that say you're not allowed to kill people. Does that stop anybody? It stops those of us who actually care about the law and who are decent human beings, but the criminals break the law no matter what. That's why they're freaking criminals. More law, more reason for them to break it. It doesn't work. What you're doing instead is taking away the ability for innocent people to defend themselves, making us victims. It doesn't work. It doesn't work there. It's not going to work here. Plain and simple. This guy was just retarded. I don't know what else to say here. Guy's just crazy. I'm so glad that he's gone. He's just a hack. You can have whatever opinion you want. If you want to be, pro-government, be pro-government. You're allowed to have those views. But it doesn't mean that I'm not going to think you're an idiot. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going to celebrate when it's like, ha-ha, woo, you're gone, buddy. Because I'm happy about it. I really am. His show was getting killed anyway. Megyn Kelly on Fox was killing it as far as the 9 o'clock time slot with ratings. And let's face it, she's a lot easier on the eyes than Piers Morgan. I would much rather watch and drool, or watch Megyn Kelly than is to sit and watch Piers Morgan's ugly mug drone on and on, driving me slowly to the brink of madness. Yeah. Bye-bye, Piers. Go back to Britain. Enjoy that big nanny state y'all have there. Good luck. Alright, guys, that is all the news I got for today. Before I kick out of here, I want to remind you guys that I've got a Twitter account. It's srebel1983. That's where you can follow me there. And I'm going to be switching up my YouTube channel. I'm going to be creating a new channel specifically for this radio show and for the website that I'm going to be building for my company. So I'll announce that when that time comes. For now, follow me on Twitter, people. srebel1983. Let's do this thing. All right, guys, you have a great day. I will see you on Wednesday. Peace.